I'm Norm Burnett. I'm from St. Stephen's Episcopal Church. And I arrived at St. Stephen's in 1980. My wife was a member of the Newman Center. We shared dual citizenship for a while. But I entered St. Stephen's, and there were two women who introduced me to the parish. Colleen Mitchell, and Colleen is no longer with us. It turned out I knew Colleen's son from the labor movement. But the person who I want to lift up today is Colleen's sister, Mignon Whitlow. Mignon Whitlow will turn 93 on Wednesday.
Wow.
She is no longer a team member, but she is still an active network member with us. Just to kind of give you a sense, she's just a stalwart part of the parish. The Episcopal Church is known as the Frozen Chosen, and tends to be very Anglophile in its way. And so I walked into this church, and all of a sudden there were black faces, which was very unusual for an Episcopal church. It was a place that all of a sudden made me very comfortable. And it was because of the long-term relationship that Mignon and I have had that I continue in that comfort, and knowing that my faith grows, and knowing that the faith that we have seen in her work continuing. She's a woman who raised 5 children, has multiple grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and is someone who has been engaged in the fight for workers' rights. As we're talking, as we're part of the choir, and she was riding with me until she decided that this year she was just getting up that early to do choir practice was just not quite where she wanted to be. Along those rides, I found out what her work history was. She'd worked in the Columbus City Schools and had been part of the union movement to build that into the Columbus City Schools. She was a state worker, and eventually she ended up, her longtime career was at OSU. She started in 1968. I started working in Cleveland, Ohio in 1968. We started about the same time. She's, started in a department that hadn't existed yet. She became the administrative assistant to someone who wanted to build the Department of Natural Resources into OSU's actual faculty and programming. And she started there and ended her career in that department. And then she went back to college and finished her degree in her 70s. So Mignon is my hero in this fight for justice. What I found out along the way is we are brothers and sisters in a very different way. We are brothers and sisters in AFSCME. We actually are in the same retirement chapter of our union. And the reason why 1968 is so important in my life is because in my union, that's when we made a breakthrough. We are here today because of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, who came to Memphis, Tennessee in 1968, earlier in the year, not just in April. He came as part of the Poor People's Campaign because 3 sanitation workers had suffered grievous injuries. 2 of them had died being crushed in a sanitation truck. What you don't know is that Dr. King had been here in Columbus, Ohio, earlier in the 60s. He'd been in Cleveland, Ohio, and had helped work through the issues with the sanitation workers here in Columbus, Ohio. and with the water department in Cleveland, Ohio, and in my unit in the social services division of the county. His work, his vision, his dedication to building justice provided my union with the emphasis to begin to look beyond where we were in a meet and greet and begin to really build that kind of thing. In the union movement, we use exactly the same process that we are being called to here in the bread work that we are doing. We meet together with workers. We listen to the issues that they have at home individually and at work. We begin to formulate what are the things that we can do together and vote on them. We do that same work together here. Our justice work as bread follows that same kind of pattern other workers around have found to bring justice into the workplace. In my workplace in 1968, there was a place called Sunny Acres. It was a tuberculin hospital. The workers there struck in 1967, in February of 67, for a reason. Carved into the walls below the water fountains were whites and blacks only. They segregated the bathrooms, they segregated the hospital lunchrooms. And it took us until 1970 to break that, even though it was against the law. It was because of Dr. King's vision that we see a very different world. How many of you realize that because of Dr. King and because of the Civil Rights Act, our hospitals in 1965, because of Medicare, were desegregated? You couldn't discriminate against people because of their race, their religion, their ethnic background. Because of Dr. King's vision, because of the work that we can do here, we can break that cycle of discrimination and making other folks other, rather than the we that Reverend Key started talking to us about. The work that we are doing here today, building our networks, building the momentum around the issues that we've decided to tackle. All of that is something that we can do because we have done it before and we continue to do it. The progress that we've made over the last 26 years is well documented. There would not be an affordable housing trust fund in this community if it were not for bread. If we have broken ground on so many other issues, if you look at it, mental health, we have built, I see every week, every day actually, I go down Broad Street and I see thank you. There. It's a place where folks who have mental health issues can come and build a community themselves and be community and be integrated into everything else. We have done the Pathway House, and we have done so many other things with this community and built justice. The work that we are doing is something that we can do even in the tension. We in the labor movement oftentimes enter negotiations not knowing what we're going to face across the table. Nor does management. And oftentimes we have tense, difficult discussions. But as you heard in the end is to get into an agreement, to get to resolution, to get to that point where we can be at peace and work together as community. So that's something that we've seen, and we lived through that tension. I can remember the tension in the room when we dealt with those issues with mental health. and the resistance that we got. That was hard, but we kept at it, and we won. We won for the community to be able to see justice happen. And so our charge today is to go from here, build our networks up. As we begin to look toward the issues of 24, and we have an opportunity. We're earlier this year. We have an opportunity to build our networks within our own communities through the summer as we approach our listening sessions. And then as we get into what are we going to look at next year? What kinds of things do we want to tackle? We've heard one option out there. There are lots of other options that will surface in those house meetings. There are ways that we can begin to see justice acted. It's because of Dr. King's vision that my union took the chance to go forward and to build itself out. When I was first a member, we were 500 people. When I left the presidency, we were about 1,500. Right now, because of the work of those who followed and who have kept it going, there are 6,000 members of that union. And that's not because, it's because we all work together and pass it on to the next generation. Our work we can do together. And I really thank you for this day and for honoring Dr. King with me. Thank you.